Hello everyone and welcome back to the 9th episode of the Road to FIDE Master series on my channel, in which I will cover the last round of the Baltic Pearl Chess Festival. I lost two previous rounds. Will I change it this time? Let's see. So, my opponent is a player that always play a move d4, and he usually try to go into the Carlsbad structure. He plays the Carlsbad structure with both pieces, so I decided that I would like to switch things up a little bit and also surprise him a little bit, if that makes sense, because it's the last round. Maybe he's preparing because he's fighting for the prizes same as myself, so I have to surprise him. So I've prepared a triangle Slav against him, which is not my weapon at all. I believe this is the first time ever I have been playing this variation, and the idea is this: if he now tries to go into the Carlsbad structure, I can do so without committing my knight to f6 while he committed his knight to f3. So I felt like it's one little nuance but would make my life better. So I felt like he might play knight c3 at this point. Then after my knight f6 going into the semi-Slav, takes, bishop g5 going into the queen's gambit declined, and so on. So that was his idea, but mine was to take on c4. So not allowing him to take, I took his pawn, changing the dynamic a lot. And I felt like because he was always going for the Carlsbad structure, he actually may not know the theory in this variation. So how did the variation continue? a4 is played in order to cut away the b5 square for my pawn, but I will get there eventually because I play bishop before pinning the knight, and after e3 I play b5 anyway. He now tries to cover the diagonal, allowing himself to take there twice, so I allow him to do so too, but I start with the move a5. If he takes, I take, he takes, I take, he plays b3. One little detail not making me play the b4 move is that after bishop takes b4 I am pinned, so I cannot play b4 yet. I have to play bishop b7. After he takes, I push the pawn, so we get very sharp position in which the pawn structure is very much different. I have already two passed pawns connected, once on the queen side, while on the other hand my opponent has two more additional central pawns. So the position is a very sharp one, a very risky one, but I was willing to take that risk, and it actually kind of paid off because the main move in here would be bishop b2, and it might seem counterintuitive because bishop d2 seems logical to trying to keep an eye on those pawns, but bishop b2 is aimed towards the biggest diagonal, and the fact that white is willing to push maybe d5 in the future, trying to make use of this amazing bishop pair. My opponent played bishop d2, so I felt like, okay, finally my preparation, which was not that well working in the past rounds, paid off because my opponent did not know the variation till the end. But also it is very new position for me, even though I felt like I am the one who knows something, I did not know everything, you know? So I started obviously with the move knight f6, simply developing move, taking control over the e4 square that is kind of crucial in those structures. Then I've castled and he played bishop e2. So he played it with confidence, so I was like, okay, does this bishop d2 move is actually a good one because he can try to play there and sacrifice my pawn, sacrifice a pawn, or is he just bluffing? And I was like, okay, it's the last round, am I willing to take more risk? I said, okay, let's do it, because I checked the line and I felt like he gained little to nothing basically with sacrificing this pawn, and also I felt like he's going for one specific line that I will show you guys. So I accepted the sacrifice, I went back, he played bishop f3 with the idea that I cannot really take because of queen f3 takes and there are some problems. Obviously I'm still holding on, but I didn't want to activate his pieces, so I opted for queen c7, and I believe that at this point the variation that he was calculating when sacrificing a pawn was this one, bishop takes b4, with the idea that after I accept it, he can now trade on a8 thanks to the x-ray on a8, but he missed one more additional move of mine, which is knight b2 d7, because even though he grabbed the pawn back, he also weakened my structure because I have only one lonely pawn on b4. Actually, I have the pressure to the a8 bishop, e5 knight, c4 pawn, h2 pawn, and his position is just collapsing really, because even if he tries to exchange on d7, I will for sure take with a knight, maintaining the pressure to those 3 squares, and I will get the material advantage back. I will have also the strategically very easy position to continue, so yeah, I am just winning. But after this first line, after allowing me to take a pawn going back in and playing there, my opponent went into the deep thought process, let's say. He was using a lot of time here because he realized that his initial variation is not working, and after a long time he played c5. I was kind of expecting c5, and I did such a mistake in the round number 4. If you haven't watched it, please do so. When I was expecting a move for like over 90%, and instead of calculating it, I was just, walking around on the playing hall, not spending time at the chessboard. But in the 4th round, I was very mad at myself. In this round, I was not. What's the difference? Because I was so exhausted with the tournament that I felt like, even though I am expecting c5 now, it's not so obvious that my opponent will choose such move, and if so, I don't want to waste my precious, let's say, calculation skills and force to do it, because I am just too tired, because it's the last round of the tournament. I hope it makes sense. So instead of thinking, I was just trying to rest really, and only after c5 move occurred I went deeper into what to do. At first I wanted to play knight b to d7 because it's the move that you normally want to play now, since you want to develop your last piece, hit the e5 knight, which is very nicely placed. However, it's not working due to tactical reasons. After bishop takes b7, queen takes b7, there is simple fork and I will lose the material. Therefore I did not go into this line, so I started thinking about alternatives. So one of those was knight e4, trying to cover the diagonal, allowing me to maybe now play knight b to d7, or bishop e4. Both moves were similar in terms of what I want to achieve, because I wanted to first of all close the diagonal and then second of all develop this knight. What I didn't consider for a long time though, and perhaps this was a mistake, was knight c6 move. If knight d7 is not working due to the fork, maybe knight c6 would work, because in terms of ideas is the same. Attack this knight. I didn't particularly like the knight c4 move, trying to run away from the exchange, putting pressure to not only the pawn but b6 square too, and knight from d7 was protecting this square, so that's why I just didn't go much deeper into this variation. But even during the game I felt like this might be the variation that I should have gone for, but I didn't. I instead opted for bishop e4. I liked knight e4 at first more, but then I thought that after bishop e4, in the end he might actually try to go for the same variation that was not working a while ago. I mean, not a while ago, a move ago, because he can now try to take on b4 and get very similar position to the one that we were already discussing. But then we had, opponent had the pawn on c4. In this setup he had the pawn on c5, making it a little bit better for him, but still I believe that after knight b to d7, hitting the knight, hitting the bishop, having an eye on the h2 weakness, I would be better. So I was kind of baiting him to play out his initial idea. But unfortunately guys, there is one crucial blow that I did not expect, and the move is knight to g4. I was completely not expecting such a move, and it's a very, very good one. What's the problem? The problem is this: he's hitting my knight, and the knight is protecting the bishop, and the bishop is kind of protecting the rook. So he is hitting me in all the spots, also including the fact that due to the pin on g-file, my king might be not that great either. So let's calculate the variations, right? I've started obviously with the most forcing lines, starting with bishop f3, which is losing on the spot. He will just take on f6 with a check, with a pin, then he will take back my bishop. So not only am I already down on material, but I am threatened to my rook. I cannot take the knight because I will get checkmated in one, so I'm just losing. I can resign immediately. Okay, so let's try to look for other variations. Knight b to d7 seemed logical because this knight connects with this one, knight connects with the bishop, bishop with the rook, so it seems like everything is perfectly helping each other. But this move has one little detail to it, which is closing up the 7th rank. And why is it important? I will show you guys on the example of going back to this place and knight e4 variation, which was for a long time my favorite, but then I switched for bishop e4 for whatever reason. The idea is this: if I now would have played knight e4, if he takes, play queen g4 with the double attack to the bishop and to the checkmate, I have f5 move, protecting the bishop and protecting myself from the checkmate. So that was the idea why this knight e4 move was okay one, but as I've said, I went with bishop e4, and after knight g4, knight b to d7 now, the problem is this: he can try to trade on the e4 square, and after the trade, he can then play knight h6, which was the idea that I've completely missed, and after king h8, queen g4 is played, threatening me to the checkmate to g7 as usual, and to the piece to e4, and the problem is that I don't have f5 anymore, because the queen is no longer protecting the checkmate because of the knight on d7. Not only that, guys, in order for me to protect from the checkmate, I would have to play move like this, after which I got checkmated in a very nice way, obviously, and after g6, which is the only other move to protect myself, I'm just losing the knight, and this knight is no longer attacked. So once again, I am completely lost while being a piece down. So I was calculating, you know, this line, nothing's working. So one last chance, right? I don't want to lose the game just like that with one move. So knight g4, obviously once more a forcing line, so we have to check this, but on the first glance it looks like it's just losing, because opponent can take on e4, attacking my rook, attacking my knight, creating pressure here, and so on. So how in the world might this work? Well, the answer is this: I can now play rook a7, and if he takes my knight, f5 is once again in contention. I can protect myself from being checkmated, and I can get the piece back. So this is what I was hoping for in general, and that's why I in the end went for the knight takes g4 variation. But to my surprise, at this point, or rather at this point, when I was shocked with knight g4 move and I was calculating the variations deeper and deeper, trying to not lose on the spot, I realized that this move is the best one, but after this opponent have two very crucial choices of going either here or here. Bishop h7, with the idea that he takes the pawn in advance and we are equal in terms of material, but at the same time he is maintaining his initiative and the attack to my king. Or just simply queen takes g4, because after f5, okay, he can then just drop back the queen and take the pawn here, right? And I was expecting either this variation or this one. In here I felt okay because of, let's say, queen f7 possibilities, protecting the pawn, creating the battery to the f file, and so on. So I felt okay, but in this other line, in this one, like, guys, I'm nearly losing. I cannot push f5 anymore because e6 is a weakness, so after queen g6 I would lose the pawn. So I believed that the only choice for me is to play g6, after which he had this very crushing move e4. Not that easily visible from the distance, but in here it's crucial to open up this bishop, because I have so many weak squares around the king that this bishop might be very dangerous. So at this point I was calculating it even deeper while deciding to go for knight takes g4, and I felt like I would play perhaps knight c6, trying to hit the pawn which was just weakened with this e4 push, and I was not sure whether or not I will be able to survive or will be checkmated, but I felt like, okay, nothing I can do, either I will lose or maybe not. But to my surprise, guys, at this point, opponent played a move that I was not expecting ever, same as knight g4, but knight g4 was an amazing move. This move was a terrible move. Like, if you have so much initiative and if you went with tactical resources, you want to open up my king, attack it, why do you go back? Why do you go back? You have the bishop pair, you want to open up the position. So like, what's going on? Right now, I just simply played f5, solidifying my knight here, blocking the g-file and the queen penetration or whatever, keeping my pawn advantage. Like, what's going on? I did not understand. After the game, my opponent told me that he saw the line, which I felt was a crucial one, with this, and this, but he did not like his bishop. He just missed completely the fact that he can try to push e4, opening it up. So it makes sense why he missed that, but I felt like it's too obvious to miss it during the game. I was just so in danger, you know? Anyway, he went with bishop d3, allowing me to play f5. And now once again I did not understand what is he trying to do, because okay, I have the double attack to the pawn, but am I really going to take it? I am not sure. But he wanted to close the diagonal for me, then he was, you know, going the rook back and forth. I did not understand it, while myself at the same time I felt like I am making my position better and better. I finished my development. I played queen b7 now, trying to make some use of this unprotected rook, and he played king f1, once again surprising me a little more. And at this point I was unsure how to continue, because yeah, sure, I have one more pawn as I was holding it for like last 10 moves after his sacrifice, but how can I, you know, make use of it, because like those pawns are blocked. On the other side of the board I did not have the majority. Bishop pair maybe is not the active one, the most active one, but at least it's protecting a lot. So how can I really go through the position of the opponent, right? So I found the idea that if he went with king to f-file, maybe opening it would be a nice idea. So I decided to go with f4. And the idea is this: he cannot really take ever my pawn because I will take his, disrupting the pawn chain completely. And if he even goes there, I can then play knight d5. Might be a little bit risky, because after e4, well, what are you going to do with the knight? And the answer is nothing. I won't go away with this knight, I will take this pawn. Because after e d5 I have knight f3, getting the piece back, opening up the position, getting rid of the bishop pair, and so on, getting a very winning position. So I was not worried about that, and I felt like f4 and knight d5 combination of moves is very nice. He went with queen b5, and I've traded here and there, and all of a sudden, as you can tell from eval bar, from my advantage, it says 0.00. Why is that? As I've said, the position is complicated, strategically, structurally new one for me. Maybe I was not playing precisely, but my idea for this variation for this position was that I go with knight to e7 with the idea of going to f5, trying to attack this pawn. And the idea is this: I saw the move e4, but I felt like after knight f4 hitting those two squares, rook g3, knight g6, I should be fine. I maneuvered my knight to the other side of the board, but I felt like from this point onwards I would be able to attack this pawn, and because of e4 was moved, the pawn tree would not survive. But the idea is this: as of now, white is even better, guys. Why is that? Well, if you have such a central pawn chain, and the bishop pair is quite a deadly combination. And the idea is that after now his move c6, I no longer really can play move rack like rook to d8 because of bishop takes before, pinning the rook, getting the pawn, getting the other one, making this pawn a very fast passer. I might be even losing now. Obviously I calculated bishop before now, and the difference is that as of now I can simply place my rook on b file, grabbing one of the bishop, but after c6 it's not that simple anymore, because at this point bishop c5 would be the move, going away from the pin while attacking the rook, because c5 square got freed up due to the pawn push. So this would be the variation. Anyway, maybe for the same reasons as I saw them, my opponent did not go for the e4 move, just simply going back with the bishop to b3, trying to stop my pawns from advancing. But I felt like at this point I have knight f5, and guys, this bishop is misplaced. e4 is no longer a threat because of knight d4 attacking the bishop. Not only that, I started seeing some possibilities for myself, because I felt like at this point the best move for him would be to play rook to f2. Why? Because he is not really worried about me taking the pawn, because the bishop actually attacks this one, right? And rook f2 would allow him to activate his rook, maybe put some pressure to my knights, because for example I cannot go like here, because my pawn is overloaded with protecting both knights. So I might be in trouble in terms of trying to go further with the position. I was thinking about, let's say, move like knight g3, but then he can actually trade here, take there, and I was actually thinking that I will give up this pawn simply because I wanted to activate my knight, let's say, to this square, and maybe try to make it work, hoping that my knight will be better than the bishop. Would that be the case? Not sure. Anyway, he went with king f2 move, and I was so happy when I saw this, because I started to see, as I've said, some tactical motives. What are they? I played rook f8, creating some problems there, and after king e2, I found this perfectly nicely looking knight f4, and I got relaxed. I got happy with a smile on my face, because I felt like I'm already winning. Well, what's the case? I delivered a fork, right? So the knight should be taken, and if it's taken, I can take the pawn, I can fork, so I have one more pawn, I will take the bishop, if the king goes like anywhere, we don't care. I deliver even bigger fork, I can trade, I can take the pawn, I can do whatever, winning the game quite easily. So I was happy when I was trying to play this move, when I was calculating this position. After knight f5, king f2, I knew it would happen. But then when the position actually occurred, I realized that after king f1, I should not be so happy. Because okay, I get the advantage, but he can take on e6 with tempo to my king. He can take back my knight, and all of a sudden, okay, I have clear exchange advantage, but like such a pawn chain, it was only one pawn that was making me problems if you remember the other variation with c6 pawn. Now there are three of them, three connected passers with the bishop pair, with some problems on one pin, and then maybe the other one, if he is willing to switch the file to the F file, like what is going on? Am I even better? So from being, you know, like overexcited, I got down emotionally and I got overly worried. Like, am I winning? Am I not winning? Like, what's the case? So after king f1, I was even thinking, okay, maybe I should not take the rook. Maybe I should think about something else. And indeed, I had one in-between move that would help me a lot, which was a4. And I was briefly considering it, but I felt like, okay, it does not give me enough edge. The idea is that with that move, if opponent takes the pawn, he's no longer threatening me to this one, and without losing this pawn, I should be much better, and also I can perhaps try to exploit the pin anyway. And if he does not take it, the point is that in the end of those variations, I would have the passers, or rather this one, just a little bit more up the board. And it would perhaps be enough for me to create more counterplay. But anyway, I went with the knight to g2 move, and to my surprise, the biggest one ever in this tournament, I believe, my opponent did not take on e6. He just went to take on like g2. He just missed the fact that he would take my pawn with tempo to my king with a check. And I was like, what? My opponent surprised me so many times in this game that I cannot even count it. First surprise was not pleasant at all with this knight g4 move, but every other, thankfully, was in my favor. So I was like, what is going on? Why didn't you, my opponent, take the pawn? I just simply protected it, and we got basically the same position, but with my pawn on e6. So okay, bishop pair might be scary, pawn chain in the center might be scary, but I hold to this pawn and I'm okay, right? So at this point I felt like my opponent has just, you know, lost the grasp of the position, the situation, because of the time trouble, maybe the tournament pressure or whatever, and he just started to play suboptimal, let's say. So yeah, I felt like from this point onwards my win should not be even questioned. How did the game continue? He played c6 in order to make my knight move from attacking the e3 pawn so that he can take my b4 pawn, but I did not feel like it's a great exchange because I can activate my rook now through the b file. At this point I felt like his best option would be to play rook b1 with some tries to, you know, deliver some discovered attacks to my king and so on. But after rook b8 I felt like I'm okay because knight protects the rook now, and if he goes with d5, takes, check, he cannot really exploit my position that much. Even though he's attacking me here and there, I'm okay. I felt like he might try to exchange and play e4, because usually passers with the bishop pair help are scary, but I have just too much material to be worried that much. But instead of that, he just went with bishop d1, basically admitting that he's worse, no activity and so on. So I felt like, okay, I can just one check, second check, grab a pawn, maneuver my knight, maybe create some checkmate patterns in the center of the board, because my knight and the rook is cutting away many important squares around the king. So in the end it was just a thing of, you know, technique, let's say, but I did not have to use all of mine, you know. I just in the end even sacrificed an exchange in order to make my position much easier to continue. At this point I have 4 more pawns, so quite an easy position, and also at the end I gave this one more little trick to the opponent, because he cannot take the pawn because of rook e5, and he cannot really play any other move, king f5 being an only alternative, but not working either. So with that g5 move, I won the game. It was a roller coaster really, because of all the surprises, pleasant or not pleasant, you name it. But yeah, in the end I got the win, 7 out of 9 guys, so thankfully the fatum of the last round did not work. I managed to win it and to get my confidence back really too, because after 2 losses the last thing that you want to see is the third loss in a row. So yeah, let's just see the review and then we can try to sum up the whole tournament, guys. So as you can tell, I will just tell myself off a little bit. It's not the best games of all from both sides, only 80 something accuracies for both players. Usually it should be above 90 if you want to consider a game a good one. So yeah, not the greatest of all. As you can tell, even the ratings are not that great. I believe one of the games I've played for the rating 3000 on the tournament, so now 20 to 50, it's not what you wish for, but anyway, it is what it is. A win is a win, which matters the most in the last round, so I was pretty, let's say, happy with that. And how did the tournament finished? Let's switch the scene and we'll talk about it. So to sum up, as you can tell from the graphic, I gained 28 ELO rating points, so quite a decent tournament, quite a decent growth of the rating, getting back to the 2200 ELO barrier that I obviously had crossed before many times, but as of now, well, I am 2155, so what can you do? I was second, so the opponent from the 7th round that outplayed me in the Ruy Lopez, Igor Musia, won the whole tournament very much deservedly. He was playing a very nice chess with amazing opening preparation, so yeah, he deserved a win. He did that with 7.5 points out of 9. I myself scored 7 points with 7 wins and 2 losses, 2 painful ones to be honest, but let's say I learned my lesson about the preparation to those games, how not to really prepare for next games like that. But all in all, I cannot complain. Second place, I would take it. If you asked me before the tournament which place I would love to have, second one is the great one. I gained some ELO rating, I had some prize money, so very nice, very nice. Thank you all for following this journey of this Baltic Pearl Chess Festival with me. 9 episodes are behind us, but don't worry, we will get fresh new ones, because when I'm recording it, I'm already playing the next tournament, so plenty of more analysis to come. If you enjoy them, if you want to see more of them, please give this video a like and subscribe the channel. I will highly appreciate it. And with that, thank you all for watching this video. We'll see each other shortly in the next one. Bye bye.